So it is Thursday, April 9th, officially 3 weeks postpartum. And I wanted to do a recap of my labor and delivery. I just haven't had a chance to. We have been adjusting to life with a newborn and just learning our new normal and learning all of her little ways and learning our new roles as parents. So I didn't get around to it, but I wanted to um, to share and to share my experience and to document my experience. Obviously, I've been doing these videos throughout my pregnancy, and also for Frida to know the story of how she joined our world and our life. So um, we actually had a scheduled appointment on our due date, which was March 19th, and in the morning of that day, my water broke. So it was about 2:37 in the morning, and I got up out of bed because I felt the urge to use the restroom. At this point, I've been going to the restroom quite frequently, and it just felt really different, like almost like if I don't get out of the bed, I'm going to pee myself kind of urgency. So I got out of bed. I just felt kind of like warmth, and I felt like a gush of water. And, up until this point, I was kind of like reading into what I should be experiencing and any kind of contractions. The week before, maybe 2 weeks even before, I was feeling like pains in my back, and I wasn't really sure. This was my first pregnancy. I wasn't really sure what to expect as far as pain and what I should be feeling. And everyone was just kind of saying, well, you're going to start to feel, back pains, and the real contractions will start when they start to shoot to the front, and you'll feel the intensity. Well, I never really felt the intensity, other than it kind of felt like sharp pain in my back, mostly on my left side, my left side, like a sharp pain. And it would almost feel like a sciatic nerve pain or throbbing, and it would kind of stop me in my tracks to make me like want to just breathe it out, and then it would pass. So I had been experiencing these kinds of like aches maybe 2 weeks before. So um, I wasn't really sure. Everyone's experience is different. Everyone's level of pain is different. So knowing that, okay, I had already I had already started to feel that. I had already had the bloody show and the mucus plug. I was just waiting for my water to break. So yeah, that happened, and I kind of was like, I didn't know how. I didn't know how to feel. I was just kind of like, oh my God, okay, this is happening. So I quickly, woke up one, and I said, I think my water broke. This is what's happening. I think we got to get ready to go to the hospital. Luckily, my bag was packed. Everything was ready to go. I just had to, I made my tea, and I got really quick dressed and got ready, and we left on our way to the hospital. So when we get to the hospital, um, they admitted me, and they first to take you into like screening kind of before they admit you to the hospital. So they asked me these questions, and they first they checked to see how far dilated I was. I think I was only like 4 still. Yeah, so I was already previously to my last appointment, which was on that Monday. The Monday, it was like the 17th, I believe. No, 16th. Monday the 16th, we had an appointment, or the 17th. No, it was on the 17th, 2 days. It was on Tuesday. So at that appointment, I was 4 centimeters dilated. We get to the hospital, I was still at 4, and they were trying to check my fluid. I guess they did like a pH level test, and it was showing that it wasn't acidic. So I'm assuming that to them that was kind of determining whether or not my water had broken, right? And because that came back with a inconclusive result, then they opted to do a ultrasound to see, I guess, to check my water levels. And they actually ended up doing it twice, because the first time they did it, it was just like an informal ultrasound. The second time they came in and they brought in like an ultrasound tech and they did like a full measurement, and that's where they also saw how big the baby was measuring. So they hadn't said anything to us yet, but yeah, so they did the second ultrasound, and basically they were trying to see how much fluid was still in my body to determine whether or not my water had broken. Because at this point, they were still saying, I don't think her water broke. And I'm only 4 centimeters dilated. I'm not having any kind of pain, or my contractions are very mild. Um, so when they did the second ultrasound, that's where they saw that my water was very, very low. There was only, I guess there's like four, or I don't know how many pockets where there should be water around the baby, and only one or two actually showed any kind of fluid. So based on that, that's where they saw, okay, then her water must have broke, because the fluid is very, very low. So then they decided to admit us to the hospital, and we just waited for my doctor to show up. So once we got into our labor and delivery room, my doctor came in and she basically explained what was going on. So my fluid was low, so they basically they wanted to help induce my labor, because they still hadn't determined that my water broke, but they could see that I had no fluid. So yeah, that didn't make sense. But anyways, my doctor came in and explained what was the process and what to expect, and what our options were as far as how we wanted to go about the labor and delivery, and what could happen, and what would be the options if going through the natural labor process didn't work. What would happen? Because at this point, she explained, the baby is measuring about 9 pounds. We can go through with your labor, and we have to just kind of see, because your fluid is low. So if at any point the fluid is too low, the baby will start to stress, and it's going to affect her heart rate, blood pressure, all of these things. So we have to monitor it closely to make sure that we get her out in time, before we have to resort to surgery. So they began the process of inducing my labor. Like, I was already having contractions, so I just wasn't feeling anything, I guess. I wasn't feeling a lot of pain. And so I didn't go through with the epidural until maybe we were like 7 hours in. I was just kind of getting through it with like breathing exercises. I brought my headphones and we were doing meditation, and when I would have a strong contraction, I would stand up and kind of hold on to Juan, and he would rub my back, and it was just a whole process. But through the entire thing, because I wasn't in any kind of like excruciating pain. It was a very pleasant experience. The 7 hours that I went before the epidural, I didn't really feel like it was that long. The only thing was like I was just anxious to go through the process. So our nurse was, we had a couple nurses, but our initial nurse, who was there for the majority of the time, she was amazing. The entire time she was asking me how I was feeling and what I wanted my experience to be. And I did, explain, I want to go through as much as I can without having the epidural. I want to have my experience, and it be my experience by choice. So she did check in with me periodically to see how I was doing, and my pain and my comfort. Let's sit you over here so you're comfortable. Like, she was really, really attentive to my needs, and we connected on the fact that I brought my affirmation board. Like, she thought that was like the coolest thing ever, and the nurses would come in and take pictures of it, because they were just like, wow, that's so powerful. And it was just an amazing experience to have that also in the back of my head, of like, okay, these are my affirmations. And as I was going through these like cramp like pains, I would recite my affirmations, I would listen to my audio, I would do my breathing, and that really helped, like, alleviate the pain as the contractions were getting stronger. So I honestly, I wanted to keep going without the epidural for a while, because every time they'd come in periodically to check, and I wasn't dilating as fast as they wanted or they expected me to. So um, they would come in and check and see if they needed to up my dose, or what is it, the I believe it's pitocin. I think that's what it is. And monitoring my contractions, and my nurse was sitting there, talking to me, and she would look at the screen where the contractions were tracking, and she would say, wow, like, you didn't even flinch, and that was a really, really strong one. So you're still able to talk. Like, you might be able to do this completely natural. But it wasn't until we got into like hour 7 that my body started. I wasn't feeling like so much the physical pain, because I feel like I had already, like, mentally, in my head, I was already kind of like, well, I can do this. I'm focused, and I'm focusing on something else, so the pain is not really relevant to me right now.